this is Bob Anderson, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Josh's Dartistry podcast. In fact, this is another bounce out episode. If we're going to be prim, proper, and precise, this is the bounce out episode number 9. This is the slightly shortened version of our regular podcast, but nonetheless, it will be burst impact full of all the latest news, views, and reviews from the darting world. Thanks for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you guys back on board again. Before we continue, though, we've got a slight change this evening. Let's come on to that. On my right hand side, or on my Zoom right-hand side, should I say, I've got the man, the myth, the legend, our regular expert, Mr. Josh Gorton. Good evening, Josh.
Evening, John. How are we, mate?
I'm good. Yes, been a busy old week at work with lockdown rules changing and being able to get some alcohol flowing at work, Josh. No doubt you've already been to Wetherspoons, Josh, and had a couple of Copperbergs, knowing you.
I haven't, actually, John. I was busy working away last night on Monday Night Football. Brighton-Everton, one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, it was dismal, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So I'm just on the Diet Coke for now.
Okay, well, we can all look forward to seeing Josh at our local Wetherspoon in the coming weeks, I'm sure. Now, normally at this stage, I would introduce our resident stats man, Mr. Neil Connor. However, Neil has got a very, very busy workload this week, and unfortunately, he's not able to join us. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, coming off the substitutes bench and making a much-anticipated first appearance, friend of the show, it's Raz Mirza. Good evening, Raz.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. We've been wanting to get you on the show for quite a while. You're quite interactive with the JDP on the social medias, and it's great to finally get you on the show, Raz. And as I mentioned on social media, to finally have an expert on the show.
Well, me and Josh are quite close at work, so Josh has been begging me to come on the show for quite a while now, probably a year and a half, I'd say. So. Couldn't turn him down this time.
Raz, I do follow you online. I really enjoy your Twitter account. You put some good stuff out there. But I mean, the multitude of sports, Raz, that you cover, not just on your online presence, but in your job. You are a digital multi-sport journalist, aren't you, for Sky Sports?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I cover anything from tennis to NBA to NFL, darts, of course, MMA, you name it. Every sport, I cover it.
And that statement could not be truer when we look back across your timeline for the last couple of weeks. And I noticed that you made a comment on Twitter about the Crufts, the dog competition. Yep. Are you a big dog man, Raz? You into Crufts?
I am now. My missus is she loves dogs.
Yeah.
Full stop. And my little girl Ruby, she's turned 21 months, and she loves dogs, chasing dogs around the park constantly. So it's going to happen one day. We're going to have to get a dog, a mini schnauzer.
There we go, mini schnauzer. There we go, Josh. Maybe there's a gap in the market there. When Raz gets his dog, we're in the market for a dog. We're moving out soon as well, so maybe we could launch the dog show podcast. What do you reckon, Josh?
Considering I'm scared of dogs, it probably won't be my best career choice, John.
On the subject of multi-sports, we had the Masters just take place weekend just gone. Raz, are you a golf fan?
Yeah, I have, but you know what? I didn't watch much of the Masters this weekend, unfortunately, so kind of missed out on it. Did you?
No, I had it on in the background. I had a lot of work to do at home this weekend. I did have it on in the background. I obviously noted that Matsuyama was the winner, but they had a bit of a reduced crowd at the Masters. Although it was still had an atmosphere, it wasn't quite what we're used to at Augusta, was it?
No, but it's the excitement, isn't it, of Augusta, and having golf back on your screens with fans, and it's the excitement of sport as well. Having sport back with fans it's something we're all looking forward to.
Absolutely. Right, gentlemen, Josh sent us both a little agenda earlier. Obviously, first and foremost, we'll be discussing last week's Premier League action. We had 5 nights last week, and it's all been going off. Just looking at the league table in front of me, but we'll come on to that shortly. We discussed the league table. We discussed the some of the results and how the nights have been going. Josh, you're also going to give us some updated odds, aren't you? Now we've had 5 nights, you're going to refresh the odds for us, aren't you?
We have, yeah. Neil brought us the odds ahead of the tournament. Some have changed considerably, some haven't. But it's quite interesting. I think we also did our predictions, didn't we, on the last podcast? And some are looking quite shrewd. Some are looking absolutely embarrassing. So we'll get onto that, no doubt, later.
Yeah, my predictions in particular are going to take a severe battering a bit later on. But no doubt, Josh, you'll haul me over the coals for that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Josh, hot on the heels of the news of the World Senior Darts Championship, the inaugural World Senior Darts Championship taking place in 2022, you managed to grab a word with one of the guys who's been invited, didn't you?
I did indeed. The legendary Bob Anderson, former world champion, 3-time World Masters winner. Always fantastic to chat to Bob, and he was in really good form. Looking forward to competing in the inaugural World Series Championship. Also spoke a little bit about what he's been doing during lockdown, and also reminiscing about Eric Bristow, who we lost just over 3 years ago now.
Yeah, so we look forward to Josh's chat with Bob. That's coming up a little bit later. And with some news items, stuff that's been going on, some announcements, Super Series. We're going to have a quick chat about World Series events as well. Josh, we've had some questions coming in on social media, have we?
We have, yeah. Not all just about Raz's hair as well. We have had some darting questions, so we'll cover those later on.
Okay.
The biggest talking point, isn't it?
It is the
biggest
point.
one.
It is the big talking point. Okay, and the Q&A section will end our podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining us. This is the Bounce Out episode 9, the Josh's Dartistry podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Josh's Dartistry. Check out Josh's website, www.joshisdartistry.com. You can also check us out on Facebook. Just go on to Facebook and do a search for Josh's Dartistry. You can download the podcast from all your fantastic podcast providers, and check out Josh's YouTube channel as well, because we always upload a YouTube video version of the show to the channel as well. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if we are ready, let's proceed with the Bounce Out episode 9.
Hi, I'm Gavin Price, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
You're listening to the Josh's Dartistry podcast. Don't forget you can check us out on Facebook, the Josh's Dartistry page. You can also follow us on Twitter at Josh's Dartistry. And you can also go to our website, www.joshisdartistry.com, for all the latest news, blogs and information on the world of darts. Don't forget you can also call us and leave us a message on our voicemail box. That's 07739 738 329. That's 07739 738 329. Call our voicemail box, leave us a message, leave us a question, and we may play it on the show. Now back to the show.
Hi, it's Adrian Lewis, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry podcast.
Right then, gentlemen, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Premier League, Josh, we've had 5 nights, haven't we? And plenty of talking points.
Yeah, I think the biggest one was before the tournament even started, John. We woke up on Monday morning to news that Gerwyn Price, the world number 1 and world champion, was ruled out of the tournament after returning a positive COVID test. And that came 24 hours after I've written a massive feature on the rise of Gerwyn Price and what we can expect from him in this year's Premier League. So that went down the tree.
It always happens to Josh for some reason.
It does. I've also done an article this week on James Wade and his resurgence, and he lost his next 2 games after that. I talked about Glenn Durrant needing to bounce back, and he lost 7-0 to Van den Berg. And then I covered Van den Berg and his fantastic start to the season. Then he lost 7-3 on the final night. So one way or the other, I am a jinx.
Yeah, I mean, imagine being a darts player, I don't know, with a big tournament, say the World Championships, and Josh doing a feature piece on you just before the tournament begins, Raz.
Yeah.
It's the absolute nail in the coffin, isn't it, to go out in the first round?
Exactly. I'm just wondering who we're going to pick this year.
I've already got whoever Raymond van Barneveld draws.
There we go, Raz. First Raymond van Barneveld reference of the evening, and no doubt there'll be plenty more of those. Okay, Josh. Before we talk about the results, we won't discuss every result in depth because obviously a lot of people have seen the darts. But let's go through the table first before we go through each night. And yeah, as you mentioned at the top of the show, my prediction of Jonny Clayton has peaked too early in the season has been shown the back door, hasn't it, mate? Because there he is, top of the tree, played 5, won 3, drawn 1, lost 1, but he's top of the tree.
He is indeed. He's had a fantastic start to his debut season. He's had a fantastic start to 2021, full stop. So many 10-plus averages, winning 3 titles. But the question was, would he be able to cope with a Premier League environment? I think the fact there are no crowds is a massive help. It's almost like a Pro Tour event, isn't it? But he's taken to it like a duck to water. 7 points from a possible 10. A tournament average of over 102. He's hit a 9 darter on night 3. He just looks so comfortable. And I think he's not a certainty, of course, because it's very tight. But I think he's got a fantastic chance of making the playoffs on debut.
Yeah, Raz, Jonny, he's certainly taken to it, as Josh says, like a duck to water, isn't he?
Oh, he's been fantastic, isn't he? He's just a breath of fresh air. I think it all started at the World Cup of Darts with Wales and playing alongside Gerwyn Price. And actually, if you recall in that tournament, I don't actually think he played that well. He was like almost got carried over the line. You could see there was a bit of a confidence issue with him. But in 2021, he's just turned into, I don't know, he's just unbelievable since he won the Masters, and he thoroughly deserved his place in the Premier League, and he's showing why he's one of the best players in the world at the moment, and he's still working, I think.
Yeah, still a plasterer for Carmarthenshire Council, I believe.
It's a fantastic story with Jonny Clayton, and yeah, I'm forever ashamed that I thought that he'd have a terrible. But listen, it's not. We've got a long way to go yet, Josh. My prediction could still come true. I don't think it will, but no, fair play to John. Just before we move on to having a look at some of the rest of the performances, Raz, what do you make of Gerwyn Price being ruled out of the tournament? Does it affect things much for you?
Obviously, being world champion, it was a huge decision. I think it was the right decision by the PDC. If it came back as a negative test, and he had to go and self-isolate. So apparently they had 2 players who were in backup. So Wade was one of them, and it was either Chisnell or Michael Smith, possibly the other. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, they might have been there. Just in case there was a failed COVID test.
Oh, wow, so that's something that they planned for. Josh, I noticed that Gerwyn put a post, didn't he, on Instagram, and I think it was deleted after a while, but he was at home doing a sort of home test, and a couple of the tests he did came back negative. I didn't know what to make of that post. I didn't know if he was having a dig or he was unhappy, or what did you make of it?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I didn't see the original because I do follow Gerwyn on Instagram, but it was deleted, like I say, within a couple of minutes. I'm sure he's frustrated because it's one of the biggest tournaments on the calendar, and I don't believe he had any symptoms, but they do say with COVID that I think 1 in 3 people who have it don't have any symptoms initially. So I think he was just questioning the reliability and the legitimacy of the test. But the PDC, unfortunately, Gerwyn's not the first one to suffer this. We saw Adrian Lewis and Stephen Bunting at the Grand Prix. They both tested positive and missed out. Glenn Durrant, of course, after the Premier League, missed out on the European Championship. Martin Clearmacher at the Worlds, Justin Pipe at the UK Open just last month. So it's unfortunate for Gerwyn, and it's a lucrative event he's missed out on. But fortunately for him, it's not a ranking event, so it's not going to jeopardise his world number 1 status. But of course, it's a real shame for the sport that he's missing out, but we've still been treated to some fantastic performances.
Yeah, I think the PDC's hands were tied, really. They've got to be seen to be doing their due diligence, haven't they, and making sure that everyone's happy and healthy. And unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbles for Gerwyn Price. But no doubt he'll come roaring back this year in some of the other tournaments that we've got coming up. So, yeah, shame to see him out. However, Josh, you know as well as I do, I'm a huge James Wade fan, and nobody was more pleased than me when I found out that James had been given the green light. I did text you, Josh, at the time and say I'm surprised they didn't give it to Chizzy, but I think you told me that in terms of the rankings, that's why they decided with Wade in the end.
Yeah, Wade was the highest ranked player not in the Premier League. His win at the UK Open took him up to 4th in the world, which ironically would have meant he was an automatic selection if he was 4th in the world in January. But having just won the UK Open as well, I don't think anyone could argue that James deserved his spot, having also reached 2 major finals in 2020. And he missed out last year, a little bit controversially as well, because he got to the semi-finals in 2019. So although he hasn't played particularly well over the first 5 nights, I think he more than justifies his selection.
Raz, James Wade is he's a veteran now. On our last show, I remember we were chatting about the fact that he's been doing it across 3 decades now, and he's still playing darts at the very, very highest level. Are you pleased to see him involved in the Premier League this year?
Incredible that Wade is still, he's still there playing at the highest level, and he's a 2009 champion, I believe. So yeah. I mean, still he's got a chance of winning it. There's no doubt. He's got so much experience, so it's hard to back against him. But we'll see. In the latter stages, that's when it comes down to it. And sometimes Wade, I don't know, he kind of like slips up.
Okay, well, we'll follow Wade's progress as we go through. He currently lies 7th in the table. But before we move down, let's finish having a look at the current top 4. Josh, we've obviously already mentioned Clayton lighting it up in top spot at the moment. But then we've got Vandenberg, Aspinall and Michael van Gerwen in 4th, completing the current top 4.
All tied on points and legs difference. It's extremely close. I don't think we've seen a closer Premier League. The top 9 are just separated by 3 points. In terms of Dimitri van den Berg, he's been a revelation, also making his debut. He's always a player, Dimitri, that struggles on the floor, which I can never understand, but he comes alive on the big TV events. We saw him win the match play last year, got to a couple of World Championship quarterfinals, and he's been fantastic. Just had knee surgery recently, so I was a little bit unsure about how he'd perform. But he's looked really confident, really composed. And although he lost to Jose de Sousa on the final night, he's still very well placed going into the second phase.
Just looking down the table then, 5th place, Peter Wright, who is on the same points as Michael van Gerwen. Rob Cross in 6th, James Wade, as I mentioned, in 7th, and Gary Anderson, Josh, down there currently in 8th place.
Yeah, all very experienced Premier League players. And Peter Wright, he's done well, I think, to be on 6 points because he's had some really tough games. I think he had Clayton on the opening night, then he's had Van Gerwen, he's had Anderson, Vandenberg and Rob Cross. So you can't really get tougher fixtures than that. And I think his running is a little bit more favourable. He's also changed his darts about 4 times, as we know Peter Wright always tends to do. So, but he's performed pretty well. Rob Cross, I think, has been a really positive surprise for me. I wasn't sure how he'd perform going into this year. His results haven't been great, but he looks a different player to the one that was eliminated 12 months ago, and I think only Nathan Aspinall has been more of a surprise, who's in 3rd. The Asp has been fantastic. I predicted him to be eliminated, John. So you're not the only one who's got a prediction looking like it's going to be a bit wrong, because Aspinall's been fantastic.
Josh, you're a bit worried about Gary Anderson, aren't you?
I said I think he could become embroiled. I'm looking at his fixtures remaining. He's got to play, I'm not sure the order of them, but he's still got to play Vandenberg, Aspinall, Van Gerwen and Rob Cross. He's got Rob Cross on night 6. If he were to lose to Rob Cross, suddenly he's going to be looking over his shoulder because you've got then 3 of the top 4. He's not played poorly, Gary. I think all his averages have been between 95 and 99. So he's a fairly good level. But you never know with Gary. He can miss doubles in spades, can't he, at times? And if he does that against that calibre of opposition, he could become in trouble. But as you said, Raz, we were talking about it the other day, whenever Gary's in a little bit of trouble, he always tends to pull out a massive performance from somewhere. So I don't think he will go down, but he's got to be careful.
Raz, whenever we record the Josh's Dartistry podcast, I like to play Josh's Dartistry bingo. There are a couple of things that I can always tick off on my bingo sheet. One of them is an early mention of Raymond van Barneveld. But the second thing that quite often gets mentioned by Josh is his dislike of the fact that Peter Wright tinkers with his darts so much. Josh is very critical of Peter and the fact that he tinkers so much. Where do you stand on the Peter Wright dart tinkering?
I don't mind it, to be honest. I think it kind of like suits his style with Peter Wright. He kind of like, I think on that last night when he picked up those darts, he said that he just saw them lying about. And he said, well, I think I'll use these tonight then. And me and Josh were texting each other on that night. And I think that you could just see the flights were wobbling. And it was almost like, what am I looking at here? It was I don't know. It was so dizzy.
I was furious with him because I had a bet on him. And I saw him throw those abominations. I said, oh, he's not going to win this. And then he proved me wrong.
Well, I think in the first couple of legs, actually, it just didn't look right, did it? And you go, right, no. He's going to change his darts any minute now. And then all of a sudden, he just clicked and started playing and he just reeled off, a couple of legs and he was on fire, wasn't he, by the end of it?
100 average, so fair play. I mean, it's hard to criticise. I know I do, and I still will, but if he keeps pulling out 100 averages... He just shows how talented he is, though, because he can throw with anything.
I think the problem with Peter Wright is that if he pulls those darts out in like a major semi-final or final and doesn't turn up and doesn't play, then he gets criticised.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when we did our predictions, I don't know if you heard, Raz, but I had Peter Wright as 5th. Not because I don't think there's 4 better players than him, but I just wasn't sure what he's going to do in terms of his darts. And I think if we get to the business end and he's still chopping and changing, I can see him coming unstuck. But I think he's pretty well placed now.
Josh, the man's won a world championship chopping and changing his darts.
Yeah, true. But the darts he used in that world championship, he didn't chop and change during that win, did he? In that world championship, he had a set of darts and he stuck to it. And it paid dividends.
I think me and Josh get a bit frustrated sometimes when Peter Wright, obviously when he turns up at the Premier League final, when he had all those darts to win it, it was never going to happen for him. You just feel for him.
Let's move on, guys. Let's have a look. We've done 1 to 8. Let's have a quick look at who's at the bottom. Now then, I backed Glenn to be in the top 4 at this stage, and certainly at the end as well. And Raz, it's just not happened for Glenn Durrant, has it? Obviously, we've got Jose de Souza down there in 9th with just the 1 win, and poor old Glenn, 5 games, 5 losses. And he's having a real crisis of confidence at the moment.
As a defending champion as well, it's you do feel sorry for him. But what does he do? He's going to go back home up to Middlesbrough and spend a bit of time up there. And he's had coronavirus as well. He's had COVID, and he's had it quite bad. And he seems to have suffered from it as well. And you can just see him; he just doesn't want to be there. I like Glenn. I like Duzzer. He's a methodical player, and he's done it. He's won 3 Lakeside Championships, and it's just quite sad to see him down there, and looking as if he doesn't really want to be there.
Yeah, Josh, it's not been nice watching, is it? We're all Glenn fans here. He's a lovely guy, on and off the hockey, and it's quite difficult to watch, isn't it?
Absolutely. I felt quite guilty when I predicted him to go down, because we've had him on the podcast before. He's a fantastic guy, so honest. I really enjoy watching him, but his form at the start of this year was quite ominous, and I feared for him, but I didn't think it would be this bad, unfortunately, in terms of his results anyway. I think he's only won 11 legs over 5 matches. His average is, I think his highest average is 88. He just looks bereft of confidence. And his last match against James, I know you were blogging it, weren't you, Raz, that night? But he started off pretty well. I thought, this is encouraging now. And then I think he was on 110 against Wadey, and he hit the treble 20, then hit the treble 18. And that just seemed to throw him completely. And suddenly he went from averaging about 96 to 87 again. I think the break could do him good. He can regroup now. The pressure's almost off, because I think everyone's written his chances off. I mean, he's 5 points off getting off the elimination zone. And with 8 points left to play for, it's very unlikely that Glenn's going to stay up. But hopefully he can try and pick up some sort of form and get some sort of positives heading into the rest of the season, because he does need a real pick-me-up, I think.
Josh, you might know this, but how many legs has he actually won?
He's won 11.
11 legs, yeah.
I think the most legs he's won, I think he's won 3 legs against Aid, Clayton and Aspinall. He won 2 against Gary Anderson and got whitewashed by Dimitri van den Berg, so it's been pretty miserable. Okay, gents, without going through each match on every night, dart for dart for dart, let's briefly have a look at all 5 nights, beginning with the first night, obviously. And Josh, to have 4 6-all draws on the opening night, I don't think anybody saw that coming, did they? No, I certainly didn't, but it was a really entertaining night of darts. I think some of the players are almost feeling their way into the tournament as such. The big result was the Aspinall-Durrant game. That was almost being pitted as the battle of the elimination contenders, which sounds daft to say on night 1, but a lot of people were backing Nathan and Glenn to go down. I was one of them. So that was a massive result for the Aspen. I think that sort of kick-started his campaign. But yeah, some really entertaining games. The Peter Wright, Jonny Clayton one was the pick of those games. Fantastic game of darts. Clayton averaged 105.5. Peter Wright, 101, and did not miss a dart at double. 6 out of 6. So that was a brilliant game. The Van Gerwen Van den Berg was also a really interesting one. Dimitri really, really solid on debut. Could have won the game, but Van Gerwen took out 101 in the decider to nick a point. So, yeah, really good night. Good start to the tournament. But that also put the pressure on Glenn, because straight from the off, he was the only player without a point to his name. And unfortunately, he's been unable to recover. Raz, was there a standout game for you on the first night?
I'd say, the Peter Wright, Jonny Clayton match was top draw. And it's unusual to get so many draws as well. I mean, it shows how high the standard of darts is in this year's Premier League. I think getting rid of the contenders has really helped, and getting players in on form will make this one of the tightest Premier Leagues in years.
Raz, it's a bit of a bone of contention on this show in terms of the format that we had in previous years with the contenders. I've never been a huge fan of it. Neither has Neil. Josh defended it gallantly on behalf of.
I towed the party line.
He towed the party line on behalf of Sky and the PDC. Listen, I appreciated it as trying to do something new. I could see the reasons for it, but I'm glad that we're back to the original format. Where did you stand on the contenders? Did you enjoy it?
I didn't enjoy it, actually, and I think Josh is on his own there.
There we go. There we go. Come on.
I tell you what, I do agree. I think the contenders lost itself in last year's Premier League when they went behind closed doors, because the whole point of the contenders was the fact it was often a home player playing in front of their home crowd. We saw some players emerge like Luke Humphreys. He did really well. We had the John Henderson in Aberdeen, didn't we? Fallon Sherritt, we were there in Nottingham, Raz, when Fallon drew with Glenn.
Unbelievable, yeah. I mean, that's what it's for, isn't it? Really, getting the contenders is to get the atmosphere going. And John Henderson in Aberdeen was just, I've never heard anything like that. And I was just listening to it on the telly. So imagine being there.
I know, it's crazy. But I think the criticism was that in the opening year, none of the contenders won. I think we had 3 draws and 6 defeats. But ironically, in the second season, we just started to get a bit of momentum because Luke Humphreys had beaten Gary Anderson. And then the next week, Stephen Bunting drew with Rob Cross. But then suddenly, lockdown came. Then the remaining 3 contenders played behind closed doors. And there was no real incentive for them because there was no crowd. They're playing for one night only and they all got walloped, really. So I think that kind of died a death. But who knows whether it will come back. Personally, I can't see it because of the amount of different major winners at the moment.
Yeah, although I wasn't a fan of it, I applaud the PDC for, experimenting and trying something different. It doesn't hurt to try new things, and if it doesn't work out, then fair enough. But fair play to them for trying it out. Guys, let's move on to night 2, Josh. Whilst we had 4 draws on the first night, not a draw in sight on the second night, Josh.
No, not at all. Very different night. Some really good matches, though, nonetheless. The opening match was a cracker. Gary Anderson against Jose de Souza. I think that was Gary's best performance of the 5 nights so far. His scoring and his doubling was very solid. Jose should have got a point, though, missed 3 darts in the decider. And that's been the theme of his Premier League, Jose. He played really well without much reward apart from the last night. Then we saw Glenn convincingly beaten by Jonny Clayton. Rob Cross beaten under par James Wade 7-3. Michael Van Gerwen and Peter Wright, I think, 2 imposters came on the stage because it was an absolute stinker of a match. Van Gerwen won with a 91 average, but the game of the night was Dimitri Van den Berg against Nathan Aspinall. The Aspinall's 5-3 up, looking like he was going to make it 2 wins from 2. And then from nowhere, Van den Berg just pulled out 4 legs. Brilliant scoring. I think he missed, I don't know how many darts at double, but he had about 27% on the doubles, but still averaged nearly 104, which is just testament to his scoring power.
Yeah, it was an interesting night. I think the most anticipated match that night for me was the Michael Van Gerwen Peter Wright game, and I say that, Raz, because there's been a lot of chat on the socials recently regarding Van Gerwen and Peter Wright, and maybe some of Peter Wright's comments about what Michael may or may not win in this darting season. And Michael Van Gerwen obviously came out on top 7-2, despite the fact Josh said they stunk the place out. But Michael sending a clear signal to Peter Wright that he's nowhere near finished this year.
Yeah, I think Peter Wright, Van Gerwen really taught him a lesson that night, didn't he? I think he really wanted that win so badly. Actually, I was listening to a Van Gerwen interview just before the tournament started, and they mentioned the Wright comments that he won't win a TV major this year. He just said that, well, I'm not playing in any tournaments and players are talking about me. Why are they talking about me? I'm not even there and players are talking about me. So it'll be interesting, to see if he does win the major. I'm sure he will. I mean, it's Michael Van Gerwen.
He is Michael Van Gerwen. He is an absolute machine. Josh, I'm just looking at some of the results there as well. The Rob Cross match, obviously Rob beating James Wade 7-3. But it's a good start, isn't it, for someone who has been we've criticised recently. He's had a bit of a loss of form, Rob, recently, but opened obviously the first night with a draw and then a convincing win against James. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's for the second consecutive year though. Last year he also got 3 points from his first 2 games and was still eliminated. The difference is this year he's gone on, and although he hasn't amassed loads of points, his performances have been very steady, very consistent. He's not had one really poor game yet, Rob Cross, whereas last year it was just like a lottery. You didn't know what to expect. So I've been really impressed by Rob. I think he was doing a lot of talking before the tournament that he was really confident. Mm-hmm. But with all due respect, he said that a lot in the last 18 months and not really delivered. But this time he seems to be doing that. So credit to him.
I think it's the nerves, Josh, that when Rob Cross he gets nervous, you tend to see it, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, Wayne's often said, hasn't he, Wayne Mardle on Sky Sports about Rob, his prolonged pause. I mean, he's always done it, even when he won the Wells. But it seems to be even more noticeable now when he's on a double. He seems to step away and it's almost like a bit of a nervous laugh he gives before he goes for a double. But he seems more confident now and he seems a little bit more bullish because he had a bit of a pop at Wayne, didn't he, about, he doesn't pay my bills, etc., which was a little bit bizarre. But I think he fancies it, Rob, this year.
Talking to Rob, let's move on to night 3. Unfortunately, Rob did come a cropper, though, didn't he, at the start of night 3 when he went up against Michael van Gerwen, Josh?
Yeah, he's got a bit of a stinking record against Michael in the Premier League. I think Michael beat him on all 7 previous occasions by an aggregate score of about 57 legs to 21. And Rob didn't do a lot wrong, in fairness, on night 3. He averaged 98 nearly, but Van Gerwen was back to his best. Over 107 average. Very, very good on the doubles. Hit 4 180s in the last 3 legs. It was Van Gerwen at his best. But we haven't seen that version of Van Gerwen on the remaining nights. I think in between that, he's averaged 92 and 90. Whereas in previous years, he might have averaged 107 one night, but then the next will still be 102, 103. His B game at the moment is not at the level he needs it to be. And that's a major concern for Michael, if there is one.
A slight inconsistency there with Van Gerwen. I think Phil Taylor said that, obviously, with Van Gerwen, he's got a family. I think he said things are going to change. And I think he was right when he said that, because like you see now Van Gerwen, he'd rather spend time with his family than playing a floor tournament.
100%, I agree, yeah.
That's a very good point. Josh, take us through the rest of the results from night 3, beginning with the rather unfortunate thrashing of Glenn Durrant by Dimitri van den Berg.
Yeah, the opening leg set the tone for this one, John. Glenn actually scored really well in the first leg on throw, left himself on tops after 12 darts, but had an absolute nightmare on the doubles, missed 11 darts to win the opening leg, and that just killed any sort of confidence he may have had. And Dimitri wasn't brilliant by any means, but was just very solid, averaged 93 and inflicted the 12th whitewash on in Premier League history and Glenn's first. So that was a bit of a galling moment for Glenn. Then we saw the former World Cup partners clash, Peter Wright and Gary Anderson. Peter came out on top, didn't feel 100% in terms of, I said he think he'd been in bed the night before against Van Gerwen, but he was solid, Peter, and took advantage of Gary's misses. And then we saw Nathan Aspinall continue his good start, beating James Wade 7-4. James was very flat again, having underperformed against Rob Cross on night 2. And then we saw an absolute barnstormer to finish the night. We had Jose de Souza against Jonny Clayton. Jose, 108 average and got walloped 7-3. How's your luck? But Jonny Clayton was just unreal. I think he capitalised on a miscount from Jose, which is not unusual. He needs a calculator, Jose, because his counting is horrendous. But 3-2 up was Jonny Clayton. He landed a 9-darter in I think it was the 8th leg of the match. Mm-hmm. And then the last 2 legs were brilliant as well, 11 and 12. So he averaged 140.9 in the last 3 legs. A 140 was not good enough to beat Jonny Clayton every visit. That's how good he was.
Amazing standard, eh?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, they always have good games on the Pro Tour, Jose and Jonny. So I thought it would be a good game. The pace was good. I think this is a concern with Jose, though. He's playing so well. He's got a tournament average of over 100. Only Jonny Clayton has got a bigger tournament average. But Jose is in the bottom 2 because he should have beaten Rob Cross on the opening night. He was 6-4 up, ended up drawing, but that was a point lost. Then he missed 3 darts to draw against Gary Anderson. That was also a point lost. And then on night 3, he was the better player early on, but that miscount threw him for a couple of legs there. So that's a concern for Jose going forward. He needs to be more clinical. Yeah,
whitewashes as well. I mean, they don't tend to happen too often, but there have been 12 Premier League whitewashes, and as Josh was saying, and it was the first since the Price Watamina last year. And of course, Van Gerwen, he's had 3 whitewashes, including Phil Taylor in 2014. I think you might remember that one, Josh. And
I do.
Wade has had 2, but he's been on the receiving end of one against Van Gerwen, who averaged 116.90 in that match.
Very good. You swallowed an abacus, Raz.
Well, I was just about to say that's the kind of research and information that this podcast has been crying out for the last 3 years. So fantastic work, Raz, and Josh, you've been put to shame there, mate.
I'm just glad Raz didn't mention the time Raymond got whitewashed.
I was going to mention that. I was going to mention it. Yeah.
We were working that, but unfortunately that night was overshadowed by the death of Eric Bristow, wasn't it, Raz? We were both working that.
Yeah,
night.
we were both. Well, yeah, we spoke about that, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Just a couple of on Eric's third anniversary of his death, and that night, I mean, I thought we did really well, to be honest, because
you were doing the report and I was blogging, and someone came in, didn't they, and told us that Eric Bristow had died, and we thought they were just on the wind up at first. It was surreal.
It was a really surreal night, but we got out. Must have got out about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the end.
I missed my train.
It always comes back to you and your train journeys, Josh, doesn't it? We've just lost an absolute darts legend, and you're worrying about getting the last train home.
Raz, give me a lift home. 25 miles.
I was watching it on TV. I didn't have the privilege of being there like you guys, but I certainly remember the news filtering through, and we'll talk a little bit more about Eric Bristow when we mention Josh's interview with Bob Anderson, but I remember the news filtering through, and it was quite evident that everyone who was in attendance in the arena was getting the news coming through on their phones at the same time, and the chorus of the Eric Bristow songs that started to come through was listen, we don't get many tearjerker moments as darts fans or darts players or even darts broadcasters and journalists, but you'd have to be a hard man, Raz, not to shed a tear that night.
No, I mean, as a kid, I actually, John Part was my hero growing up. I don't know if Josh, you knew that, but
I do, because you wrote a feature on John Part, didn't you? And you mentioned it to me the other
month. In fact, John Part wants to use it as his CV.
That is a good.
He said it was that good.
Wow.
That is some recommendation, that.
I know. But I didn't see much of Bristow growing up. All I can remember as a kid was like my dad watching Bristow, and it was more of a pub kind of game, and but you just remember players like that, Bristow and Bobby George, and it's just like that's what gets you into darts.
Okay, as I said, we'll mention Bristow a little bit later when we talk about Josh's interview with Bob Anderson. But let's move it on, Josh. Take me through what happened on night number 4.
Well, it kicked off with a battle between the former housemates, Dimitri van den Berg and Peter Wright. Van den Berg stayed at Shea Snakebite last year during the first lockdown. Had a really, really good match. Dimitri was ahead for large periods, but got pegged back by Peter Wright, ended in a 6-all draw. Dimitri averaging over a ton in that one. Then we saw Rob Cross get back to winning ways, inflicting Jonny Clayton's first defeat of the season. Johnny was a little bit profligate, I'd say, on the outer ring. I think he missed 13 of his 16 attempts at double. Still averaged 96, but Rob took advantage really well. Another solid display from Voltage. We had James Wade beating Michael van Gerwen 7-3 to get his first win of the season. Michael, having averaged 107 the previous night, was really flat. Averaged his lowest, I think, in Premier League history, just 90. James wasn't spectacular, but just produced a typical Wadey performance, really. 3 ton-plus finishes, 120, 121 and 135. We had Gary Anderson, comfortable win against Glenn Durrant, 7-2. But the match of the night, Jose de Souza against Nathan Aspinall. We had Jose in the opening leg kick off with 6 perfect darts, missed the 9 darter, then missed count on the 82, as we know with Jose, then missed about 6 darts at double to win the opening leg. What did he do in the second leg? Hit the 9 darter to bounce back. Typical Jose de Souza. He had 11 180s in that game, which equals Gary Anderson's record, which goes back 10 years. 11 180s in 12 legs is just astonishing. And there was a 171 and 177 in there. But Aspinall still picked up a point. And that's just Nathan Aspinall all over. He's such a tenacious player. He never knows when he's beaten. And that's, in my opinion, been the game of the tournament so far. Brilliant entertainment.
Well, Aspinall now finds himself 3rd in the table. We'll come on to night 5 in a minute, where he nicked the draw, obviously, with Michael van Gerwen. But on the back of those results, Josh, he finds himself in 3rd place in the table. It's not bad going for Nathan so far.
Not at all. He got to the playoffs, of course, last year and reached the final, losing to Glenn. But since that, in October, he's struggled. He hasn't got to the quarterfinals or beyond the quarterfinals in his last 7 TV events. And the Asp is someone who loves the crowd. We've mentioned on previous episodes about Gerwin Price and Van Gerwen loving the atmosphere and getting the adrenaline going. But Aspinall's quite similar. And I think he's struggled a bit, but he seems to have got that intensity back in his game. And I think he's almost been fired up to prove people like me wrong, who said he would be in a relegation battle this year. because he's just kicked off with that massive win against Glenn, and he's not really looked back. He's been very consistent, averaging 99 over the 5 days, and I think he's very well placed now. I think he's almost certainly safe of elimination. Now it's all about looking towards the top 4, I think, for Nathan.
Yeah, I think he showed that he did it last year, didn't he, in the Premier League? So he's doing it again and proving people wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And Raz, just going back to that James Wade result over Michael van Gerwen. James obviously been missing from the Premier League circuit for a couple of years, and after getting the late call up and being back on the biggest stage of them all, James would really have enjoyed a 7-3 win over Michael van Gerwen, the man who's arguably modern darts' most prolific player at the moment.
Yeah, I mean they're both old pros, aren't they? When they get down to it, they both know each other's game inside out. So I'm sure he really enjoyed that win against van Gerwen.
Josh, let's move on then to the last night of the week before we go into the first mid-season break. Night 5 of the Premier League. Tell us how that panned out.
Kicked off, John, with Gary Anderson against Jonny Clayton. Big win for Clayton, having lost to Cross the night before. Got back to winning ways. Really, really solid display. Over 102 average. Outscored Gary, which is some feat. Then we saw Peter Wright with his wobbly darts beat Rob Cross 7-5. 5-3 down he was in that one, right? Cross will be frustrated, really. He had chances to claim at least a point. Then we saw Nathan Aspinall for the second night in a row claim a draw, this time against Michael van Gerwen. Quality display from the average over 105. His best performance of the 5 nights. We saw James Wade claim his second straight 7-3 win, this time against Glenn Durrant. We saw glimpses from Duzzer early on, but fell away at the latter stages. And then we saw Jose de Souza claim his first win of the tournament, a massive win against Dimitri van den Berg, 7-3. Because ahead of the game, he was 3 points adrift of Gary Anderson in 8 spots. So it was a must-win game, really, for Jose, and he delivered to beat Van den Berg, 104 average for the Portuguese. Yeah,
some interesting results on night 5. Standing out for me, Josh, the Van Gerwen Aspinall match. Van Gerwen drawing that game, and then the previous night he'd lost, didn't he, to James Wade, and finding himself 4th in the table after playing 5 games and only 2 wins under his belt. That won't sit well with Michael, will it?
It won't, no, but I think it shows just how competitive this year's Premier League is, because Jonny Clayton's the only man to have claimed 3 wins or more from 5 matches, which is almost unheard of. In previous years, you see the likes of Taylor or Van Gerwen or Anderson, for example, winning 4 or 5 of their first 5 matches. But in fairness, yes, Van Gerwen had a match start to beat Aspinall, but Aspinall was a better player, I think. Raz would agree in that game, really. He was hanging on for large periods.
Yeah, it was a brilliant match, wasn't it, Josh? We were talking about that. I think it was for me that was a match of the first block of matches overall.
It was definitely up there. The pace of the game was brilliant. That's what made it, I think.
Yeah, and are we going to talk about Jose's miscounts? What do you think?
Oh.
What do you think the problem is behind this?
Well, he said, because he had an interview with Wayne Mardle and Emma Payton from Sky on night 4 after he played Aspinall. And Wayne was saying, "What's the problem, Jose? Is it you can't count?" And he says, No. It's not the counting. It's my concentration. He said, like the other night, I needed 70, but in my head, I thought 78.
Yeah.
So you could forgive him for one, but it seems to be every match now. Like I can't remember what the finish was, but he miscounted early on against
Clayton. Clayton, the night before he hit the 9 darter, he butchered a textbook 70 checkout. Yeah. And then he went on to lose 5 out of the next 6 legs.
Exactly. And against Aspinall, like I say, the first leg against Aspinall, he was on 82. He hit a single 3 to leave 79, went treble 13 to leave tops, and he throws at double 16. So it must be a counting issue. But I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, lads. There's a guy, I think he goes by the name of Josh Pearson. He's a Jose de Souza fan, but he actually bought Jose de Souza a calculator and sent it to him in Milton Keynes. Which is absolutely legendary. And Jose's manager, Mac Elkin, confirmed on Twitter that he's received it. He's now just got to learn how to use it.
Oh, well, at least
fair play.
At least he took it in the spirit that it was meant. I think there might be a few players that would have rattled, but at least it was taken in the spirit that it was meant. But yeah, I mean, listen, I'm crap at maths, right? I failed GCSE maths terribly. I think I got a D in my GCSE maths. But these days, Raz, well, not these days, every day, basic maths is a staple of a world-class darts player. It's incredible, really, that those kind of mistakes not get made once, but frequently.
Yeah, you kind of tend to have to worry if Jose's doing it, week in, week out, because then you think, hang on a minute, there's a problem there. So he needs to rectify it, and he needs to rectify it pretty quick. Otherwise, he's one of those miscounts is going to cost him dearly. He's going to cost him like in a major semi-final or a final. But he's a major winner already, so it just happens now and again.
I think the issue as well is he's played a lot of soft tip darts in the past, where you don't have to really count a lot in the soft tip. It almost does it for you.
Yeah.
So I think the fact he's getting used to playing steel tip is an issue. But it's also his board management. It's not just his counting. It's like when he was on 72 the other day, he took it out, but rather than going the conventional like 20, he goes 2 double 18s. Now he hit it, but imagine you miss the board. I think he did miss the board with his first dart. So it's just stuff like that. You can get away with it against lesser players on the Pro Tour, but against the best, you'll be punished.
But then again, the modern day dart players, some darts player, the modern day ones don't go the conventional way.
No.
As, they kind of like tend to think of their own ways of for an outshot these days. So it's always it's modern thinking, I think. So and it's also good. It's show, isn't it? Showing off to the crowd.
He's brilliant. He's a spotter's nightmare, though, Jose, because he doesn't even know what he's going for. Never mind the spotter.
Well, nothing pleases me more than when Wayne Mardle's on commentary and he'll call what he thinks they're going to throw for, and then they come up with some ingenious way of achieving it outside of the way that Wayne predicted. I really enjoy when they go a different route around the board, and not that I've got anything against Wayne Mardle and his commentary, of course, fantastic commentator, but it does make me laugh when he calls it and they go somewhere else, Josh.
I know, it's always entertaining. I think he said to Jose after his draw against Nathan Aspinall, he said, Jose, I can't sleep because of your counting. And Jose just replied, you have to go and see a doctor then. Brilliant.
Just a last little bit on the results, gents. Raz, we've spoken about Jonny Clayton obviously finishing after night 5 top of the table. Tell me how Gary Anderson will be feeling at the moment, finishing night 5 with that loss to Jonny and sitting 8th in the table currently, Raz.
I don't think it'll be too bad, because he's on 5 points. And he's still in with a shout of making that top 4, and that's what he'll be thinking about. He's an experienced darts player, so when he needs to produce, he'll do it.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. And as you say, Josh, it's so tight up there. Was it 3 points you said separating, isn't it? The to 9th spot. So, all to play for still as we move into the next phase. The next phase, Josh, of the Premier League, taking place April the 19th to the 22nd, again behind closed doors in Milton Keynes. And 2 players will be eliminated on Judgment Night, which is the April the 22nd edition. Josh, we are unable to change our picks. They are cast in stone. There's not a lot we can do about that. But Judgment Night, what are you thinking on April the 22nd now?
I think Glenn Durrant, unfortunately, is almost a certainty to go down. I think if you look at it, only 2 players in the past have actually gone down with 6 points. I think this year that figure will rise. I think you'll need probably 7 points to save yourself at least. And that means Glenn either getting 4 wins or 3 wins and a draw, and I just can't see it on current form. I think if you're looking for Glenn to try and bounce back, on night 6 he has Michael van Gerwen. I mean, welcome back to the Premier League after 5 straight defeats. Yeah. So that's going to be tough, and I think that's reflected in the tournament odds here. I've got the tournament odds via Sporting Bet, and we've got Glenn Durrant is 1 to 100 to be eliminated after night 9, which I think says it all really. Then it's quite tight. The bookies cannot separate Jose de Sousa and James Wade. They're both 11 to 4 to be eliminated on Judgment Night. And I can kind of understand that, because without being disrespectful to Glenn, Jose still got Glenn to play, which you'd expect him to win, whereas James has already played him. Then we've got Gary Anderson and Rob Cross are both 9 to 2 to finish in the bottom 2. And then it's Nathan Aspinall 6 to 1. But I personally can't see the Asp getting embroiled in an elimination battle, to be honest, the way he's playing.
Raz, how do you feel the break will affect the players? Obviously, they've had 5 nights on the bounce. There's an argument to say, they're across those 5 nights they get into a certain rhythm, and now they've got to have this week-long break. How do you think that will affect things as we go back next week?
Yeah, I mean, it might affect players who have had to stay in their hotel rooms, or who can't really travel abroad. So, but I think it might help Glenn actually going back home to see his family, and I think it'll help him forget, and then he'll come back refreshed and hopefully make it an even tighter Premier League. But I agree with Josh. I think Wade or De Sousa, one of them might joined Glenn in getting relegated, unfortunately.
How dare you? James Wade will not be in the bottom two. How dare you? Josh, have you got some updated odds for progression and the tournament win?
I have. I've got in terms of top in the league, we've got Marco van Gerwen is 11-8 favourite to top the league for the 8th year out of 9. Peter Wright is actually 3-1 second favourite, although he finds himself in 5th spot. We've got Jonny Clayton at 4-1. Dimitri van den Berg 10-1. I think there's good value there. He's only 1 point off his Dimmy. And then Gary Anderson and Nathan Aspinall at 20-1 to top the league. In terms of tournament winner, Marco van Gerwen was the favourite beforehand. He is still the tournament favourite at 7-4. Peter Wright is 4-1 second favourite, but Jonny Clayton has come in from about 20-1 to 9-2 to win the tournament, which just reflects how well he's playing. Then we've got Dimitri van den Berg 8-1. Gary Anderson and Jose de Sousa are 12. Interesting, really, that Jose is the favourite, well, one of the favourites to be eliminated, but he's actually joint 5th favourite to win the tournament. Then we've got Nathan Aspinall and James Wade at 14s. Rob Cross is 22-1, and Glenn is 1,000-1, unfortunately.
There we go. Interesting. So, yeah, if you've got any money burning a hole in your pocket and you're wondering where to put it, there you go. Josh has given you some advice on what the bookies are saying. Raz, let's get your take on this. Obviously, you've got the advantage of being 5 nights in. Who do you think will finally finish in that top 4 and then indeed win the tournament?
I think you've got a good one there in Dimitri van den Berg to actually top the table is a really good shout. And to actually go on and win the title, potentially.
Yeah.
Van den Berg, he's got the game. He's lost the leg brace. He's back to dancing Dimitri, isn't he? So
He is indeed.
So yeah, I like Van den Berg a lot. Dimitri's entertaining. He's exactly what we need. Somebody like that to win the Premier League would be fantastic. But then again, you can't back against somebody like Michael van Gerwen, of course.
Okay, excellent. There you go. That's what Raz thinks. Lots to look forward to. Don't forget, April the 19th to the 22nd will be phase 2. And then, Josh, the final phase of the Premier League. What's the dates on that, just off the top of your head?
So after Judgment Night, John, we have a little bit of a break. Then we'll play to a finish over 2 different blocks in May. And I think May the 28th is finals night, when we'll be crowning our new Premier League champion.
Excellent stuff. Well, we look forward to that. That is our little wrap-up of the first 5 nights of the Premier League. And, yeah, been good fun. Enjoyed it.
This is Nathan Aspinall, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
You're listening to Josh's Dartistry. Don't forget, you can check us out on Facebook by going to the Josh's Dartistry page. You can follow us on Twitter at Josh's Dartistry, or go to the website www.joshisdartistry.com for all the latest news and insight into the world of darts. You can also leave us a comment or a question via our voicemail box. Just call 07739 738 329 and leave us a message, and we may play it live on air. Now back to the show.
Hi, this is John Lowe, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Right then, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Josh managed to catch a word with darting royalty, let's be honest, Bob Anderson. How did that go, Josh?
Yeah, really well, thanks, John. It was great to chat to Bob. It was quite a timely interview as well, considering it was just announced that he'd been playing in the World Seniors Championship next year. So he's in good spirits, looking forward to that, and he said he was getting back on the practice board. So great to chat to Bob.
Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry.
Right, guys, I'm delighted here to be joined by the darting legend that is Bob Anderson. Bob, many thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Firstly, Bob, how are you keeping in these strange times that we're living in at the moment?
Yeah, I've retained my sanity, I think. I hope so, anyway. Yeah, I'm glad to be able to get back out on the golf course for the last couple of weeks. It's been tough, but I think it's been tough and a lot tougher for a lot more people. I'm fortunate. I've got a nice garden. I can get out there. I've got a man cave with a dartboard in it. That gets visited quite regularly.
We know that you're still active on the exhibition circuit, or you were certainly before COVID struck. So have you been playing much darts during the lockdown?
To be fair, no, not a great deal. But, I turn the arm over from time to time just to make sure it remembers what it has to do and to try and convince myself I remember which end sticks in the board.
what I wanted to talk to you about, Bob, is we saw some very exciting news break last weekend that Modus are set to host the inaugural World Seniors Darts Championship early next year. Now, I've read that you've been invited. Can we confirm that you're going to be competing in it?
You can indeed.
That's fantastic news. So you must be really excited about that.
I am. It's, I've been retired for 13 years from the competitive tour. I'm quite excited to be stepping back into the ring. You know, mid-70s, I don't think I can expect to play like I did when I was at my peak. But anyone who thinks I've finished may be in for a bit of a surprise.
Absolutely, and there's so many big names set to be involved. Phil Taylor, of course, set to headline the competition, but there's the likes of yourself, John Lowe, Dennis Priestley. It's a fantastic opportunity for you, but also great for the fans to see the best players from yesteryear, isn't it?
Well, I hope so. You know, I think we still attract an audience of certain age group, should I say, and it'll give the youngsters perhaps a chance to see some of the people who, in some small way, are responsible for what they're seeing today. Absolutely.
And how is the game, Bob? I mean, admittedly, you haven't had the chance to play competitively for a while, but I'm told before that you are still very capable of giving anybody a run for your money.
Well, yeah, certainly up until lockdown last year, I was still capable of a pretty rapid game. I suppose the truth be that, the consistency is not quite what it was. Every so often a game appears that makes me think I can still play.
Well, we'll hope we can see that at the World Seniors Championship next year, that's for sure. But we're yet to get confirmation of a venue for the tournament. Now, you've played at the likes of Lakeside, Circus Tavern, two iconic venues. Would you have a preference?
I played at Ali Pali as well.
You did indeed, yeah, the inaugural staging. But we know it won't be held at the Ali Pali, or we don't think it will be. But would you have a preference about where it's played?
Quite honestly, no. I don't mind as long as it's a decent venue that gives us a bit of space. I would welcome any venue, to be totally honest.
And I think we can safely say you won't be walking on with a horse as you did at the Circus Tavern in 1995.
Yeah, you certainly got that right. No, that horse gets more publicity than I ever did.
But Bob, you're deservedly regarded as one of the game's all-time greats. But you're also multi-talented, weren't you, in sporting terms, in both as a javelin thrower and a footballer. So could you tell us about that and what made you turn to darts?
Well, injury is the short answer. I was lucky enough to be a decent athlete training for Mexico Olympics, and unfortunately broke a bone in my arm throwing the bloody thing, and that was the end of that. But I went from big spears to little arrows. One door closes, another one opens. And soccer was my first love. Played as a goalkeeper for Swindon schoolboys. But in every goalkeeper, there's a frustrated centre forward. And I came and started scoring goals for fun. I had a couple of trials, but I wasn't good enough. But eventually I found my niche.
Absolutely. And you enjoyed so much success in your darting career, Bob. Captain in England, the world title win, of course, against John Lowe, 3 consecutive World Masters. Do you have a particular highlight of your career?
In terms of pride, it would have to be captaining the England side. It was, to be asked to represent your country is a highlight, but to be asked to captain the side was, I wish my late father, I wish he lived long enough to see that. He would have been the proudest man in the universe. But I still get goosebumps thinking about that day. The only regret being that Eric wasn't in the side because he was suffering terribly with dartitis at the time and didn't make the squad. But everybody else you could ever think of who's been anything to darts was in that squad, and I was extremely proud to lead that side out.
Absolutely. You mentioned Eric there. I know you're a very, very good friend with Eric away from the board, and last week marked the 3rd anniversary of his passing. I think it'll be fair to say that darts would not be where it is today without the legend that is Eric Bristow. Isn't that fair to say?
Without a shadow of a doubt. Eric put darts on the map. He awoke the world to it, and he's still sadly missed.
Absolutely, I totally agree, Bob. And I want to kind of go back in time now, because you were one of the founding members of the PDC, one of the 16 players involved in the high-profile darting split. When you made the decision to form what is now known as the PDC, could you have ever imagined the sport being as popular and as big as it is today?
I don't think we probably imagined it would get quite as big. There was no doubt of its popularity, but like Topsy, she grew and grew. Absolutely incredible. And every time I watch darts on TV, I feel quite proud to have had some small part to play.
Talking about the modern game, Bob, have you caught much of this year's Premier League so far? And if so, what players have impressed you so far?
9 darters.
Oh no, 2 in 2 nights. It's incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible. I mean, the bar has been shifted so high that I could comfortably jump underneath it now.
Superb. Listen, Bob, it's been fantastic to chat to you today, and we all can't wait to see you back in action at the World Seniors Championships next year. So, Bob, many thanks for joining me, and take care.
Josh, my pleasure.
Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry.
Well, there you go. There is Josh's interview with the former world number 1, Josh, and great to hear from Bob. And it sounds like he's keeping busy, Josh.
He is indeed, yeah. I mean, he's very active on the exhibition circuit, Bob, even though he is in his 70s now. So that's been curtailed due to lockdown. But this gives him a little bit of motivation now, something to get back on the practice board for. And I think he'll pose a stern test at the World Seniors, because I think going back a decade or so, he won the League of Legends, where they had like Eric Bristow, John Lowe, Keith Della, Cliff Lazarenko. He came out on top in that. So he can still throw a mean dart or two, as he said there. And
Raz, I know you're a fan of the old school darts players. You grew up watching Bob and the like. Nice to hear from the 1988 BDO World Champion.
Yeah, the Limestone Cowboy, an absolute legend. You know, I just remember him coming out with the horse at Lakeside. And we've got to mention that, haven't we?
Yeah, we have to mention the horse.
But yeah, I mean, he had the look, let's say, and
it was a Circus Tavern, wasn't it? The horse.
It was
Circus Tavern, yeah. But I mean, Bob Anderson as a player and a character he was proper old school, wasn't he?
Raz, what do you make of the announcement of the Seniors World Championship organised by Modus and the Snooker Legends Group? Is it something you're looking forward to?
It's about time we had it, I think. You know, we've got so many dance legends out there, and you know, it's just you've got snooker legends, there's probably football legends, there's tennis legends, and dart should have it.
Interesting, Josh, that Bob, I know during the interview you asked him if he had a preference for the venue, and he said he didn't mind as long as they had plenty of space and room. But are there any venues, Josh, that fall into your... I mean, obviously I'm not expecting it to be held at Ali Pali, but are there any sort of legendary darting venues that you think would be fitting for a tournament like that?
I think the obvious two are the Lakeside and the Circus Tavern. I mean, the Lakeside is one of the most synonymous in terms of the BDO, and the BDO is no more, really, unfortunately. So that'll be fantastic. Most of the players who will be competing in that first started out at the Lakeside, but the Circus Tavern, I went a few times, not for the PDC Worlds, but for like the Players' Championship finals, which they used to hold there. It's a fantastic venue. It's such an intimate atmosphere, and I think that'll be so brilliant for the fans to welcome back all these legends there at the Circus Tavern, where a lot of players have won world titles there. So for me, one of those two would be ideal. But I can't see anyone stopping Phil Taylor in this. I mean, let's be honest. Phil, when he retired, he was still not at the top of his game, but still one of the best in the world.
Well, he reached World Championship final, Josh.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, he wasn't the Phil Taylor before, was he? He wasn't the Phil Taylor of winning every single event he went in. But he even now, if he was still playing now, I think he'd be top 8, Phil.
Top 8?
Yeah. Really? I think he'd be in the top 8.
I think it'd be top 4.
You reckon?
Yeah. He still got it.
Yeah,
he'll never lose it.
We'll find out, won't we? But I think it'll take some stopping. I mean, the likes of Anderson, Wright, and Barney, age-wise, they would be eligible. But I think in terms of the PDC contracts, they're not allowed to compete. So I think Phil will take some stopping, because obviously John Lowe, Bob himself, they're all capable. But Phil is the most recently retired out of the legends, if you like. I know you got Richie Burnett. Wayne Warren might be competing the BDO World Champion. So you've still got some current players.
Barney will be there eventually, though, won't he?
Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder. I'm not being cynical at all when I say this, but you have to wonder if this was announced before Barney entered Q School, whether he thought, well, I'll just play in the Legends Tour, for example. You have to wonder.
Well, the whole reason Barney, he wanted to come back was because he wasn't playing, and he said, "Oh, I had nothing to do in lockdown," and he was doing tours, wasn't he? And
yeah, the online darts, but
the online darts, and he was doing like TV events as well. But then it all ran out, and over because of the pandemic, then he had nothing to do, and that was the whole reason why he came back to get a tour card.
Because he had it all mapped out when he retired. He had a Taylor versus Barney tour, wasn't it, on the exhibition circuit? They had about 20 nights planned, and that, of course, all got cancelled. So, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I can't wait to see the likes of Dennis Priestley back playing. John Part, your favourite Raz, John Part will be there. He can still throw a mean dart. We've seen him at Q School be competitive over the last few years. John Lowe, though, that'll be a throwback, wouldn't it, to see John? Keith Della, Sky Sports spotter. So we've got plenty of big names. Should be good.
Raz, just going back to Bob's interview there, he touched on Eric Bristow and his old foe there, and paid a bit of a tribute to him. Eric, of course, famously best man at Bob's wedding. How do you think Eric Bristow would fare if dear old Eric was still with us and he was taking part in the Seniors World Championship? How would Eric get on?
Cockney, I think he'd be right up there, wouldn't he? He'd be loving it, egging on the crowd. Hopefully, if there is a crowd, if the crowd do come back, then I mean, he's a fan's favourite, Eric, and much loved.
I think we talk about a lot in the modern game, don't we, about mind games. I think particularly behind closed doors, we've seen it become more apparent because you haven't got the crowd interaction. Players seem to be affected by a lot more things. I think mentally, Eric would destroy a lot of the modern players. He would have them beaten before they walked on the hockey, I think. Yeah,
he'd get inside players' heads, wouldn't he, before they even got on the hockey. That was the whole thing with Eric, and he'd play mind games, and you were lost. You'd lose a match even before you actually got up on the stage against Eric. That's how good he was.
I'd love to see, imagine having watched Eric Bristow against someone like a Gerwyn Price. That would have just been box office, wouldn't it? That would have been fantastic.
Well, that was part of my suggestion for getting rid of the contenders, part of the Premier League, and if they wanted to bring in special guests rather than up and coming, I wanted them to bring back some legends. I wanted to see Phil Taylor wheeled out one night, Barney wheeled out one night, and if dear old Eric was still with us, then we could have been treated to that kind of thing. But no, we have to look after the young up and coming talent of the PDC. in
like WWE style,
yes,
bringing them in down the round.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that idea.
Smoke, almost the gong of the Undertaker. All the lights go down, and then the lights come up again, and it's Phil Taylor just eyeballing Gerwyn Price on the stage. You can't write drama like that, Josh. You can't write drama like that.
It would have been good fun, I must admit. I mean, the crowd would have absolutely loved it, wouldn't they? But it would have been very difficult keeping it all quiet. Because, Barney and Taylor, they're not the most subtler characters. You can't really hide them, can you?
Listen, when there's an appearance fee involved, I'm sure they would have been able to purse their lips for 48 hours. I'm sure they would have been able to. Anyway, it's fantastic to hear from Bob. Great chat there with Josh and Bob. Bob, thanks for coming on the show and taking the time to come and speak to Josh. You are always welcome on the Josh's Dartistry podcast. We wish you all the best for the future, but certainly so with the Senior Darts Championship planned for early 2022.
Hello everybody, I'm Glenn Durrant and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
You're listening to Josh's Dartistry. Don't forget, you can check us out on Facebook by going to the Josh's Dartistry page. You can follow us on Twitter @Josh's Dartistry, or go to the website www.joshisdartistry.com for the latest news and insight to the world of darts. You can also leave us a comment or a question via our voicemail box. Just call 07739 738 329. Leave us a message and we may play it on air. Now back to the show.
This is Danny Baggish, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Right then, gentlemen, it's time to get some news.
the news.
Right then, Josh, first up, I can see on your agenda, World Cup of Darts news. Tell us about that, buddy.
Indeed, the World Cup of Darts, traditionally held just after the Premier League finishes in June, it's been rescheduled this year for mid-September. It's going to be held in Jena, in Germany. It was held in Austria, of course, for the first time last year due to the pandemic. It returns to Germany to take place at the Sparkassen Arena from September the 9th to the 12th. So that does give players more of an opportunity to qualify as well, because it's got to remember each country has 2 players represented. So it goes to the 2 players highest on the order of merit. And I think for this year, England, it's a bit of a minefield at the moment. James Wade and Rob Cross are currently in possession of the 2 highest spots. But the likes of Chizzy, Michael Smith, Nathan Aspinall, all trying to chase them down. So by September, it could be a very different lineup.
Raz, the World Cup of Darts, is it a tournament that you follow closely? Do you enjoy the World Cup?
Yeah, I like the World Cup of Darts. I think it's a great tournament. It's certainly getting more and more viewership, and I think we covered that, didn't we, Josh? The last World Cup of Darts, and
with Wales winning it, it was a really good event.
Wales winning it was a really good event. So obviously, help players like Jonny Clayton, look what it's done to his career. So yeah.
I enjoy the World Cup of Darts purely for the fact it's a different dynamic, Raz. It's not often we see the pairs format in the PDC. In the BDO, there's always been some sort of tournaments where, the pairs format does come into play. But it's interesting to see how world-class darts players who are used to being on their own, performing on their own, now have to interact with someone who 9 times out of 10 is their opponent on the stage. It's nice to see how that dynamic works, isn't it?
I think there should be more pairs, actually, because that's the whole point of the World Cup of Darts, is like there's too much singles, and I think there's been a bit of criticism for the World Cup of Darts because there's not enough pairings. I don't know, Josh, if you agree with that.
I do. I always think the early stages of the tournament are the most exciting because it's just the doubles, but then it gets into the second round, like you say, and it becomes singles matches. And if you've got 2 singles players, usually England play or Holland play against a lesser nation, they win both singles matches. You don't see any doubles. Yeah. I think in the last World Cup, we went a whole day, 8 matches, and we saw 1 doubles match. So I'd like to see the doubles almost form the whole part of it somehow, rather than the singles matches. Because as you say, it's a different dynamic. It adds more pressure, and the prestige of playing for your country, it creates so much drama and emotion. We've seen a lot of fallouts on that stage at the World Cup.
You think they should change the format of it then?
I do. I know it's logistically an issue because it's held over like 3 days, isn't it? So it might be tough to cram in. But even if they extend the format in terms of legs and just have 1 doubles match. So rather than having 2 singles and maybe a doubles decider, just have best of 11 legs doubles. I think it adds something more to the tournament and then extend the format as we go on. But I want to see more doubles and less singles.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the World Cup Darts, isn't it? It's to see doubles, and that's what you want to see more of. And it makes it more exciting, gives the other lesser nations a chance of winning.
Exactly. Remember the first year Spain beat Taylor and Wade for England?
Yeah.
And we saw Finland beat Barney and Van Gerwen before. But if you have 2 singles matches, they're never going to really beat Barney or Van Gerwen in terms of singles, because that's their bread and butter, the big guy. So I'd like to see it because I think it gives, like you say, the lesser nations more of a chance.
And Raz, moving into that tournament, I don't have the odds available. I doubt the bookmakers have published any odds for a tournament that far in advance. But going into that tournament, it'll be hard to look past the Welsh team for me. I think Team Wales are doing great bits and pieces at the moment.
They're a great team at the moment. Clayton and Gerwin Price they gelled so well, didn't they? Even though Price carried Clayton a bit, and Clayton wasn't really hitting top form, but they deserve to win that World Cup of Darts. And they'll probably be the team to beat again, I think.
Yeah, I can see them. I can definitely see them moving into the favourite spot as we go into that tournament. I'm sure there'll be some outside bets as well, Josh. We have seen some emerging nations, haven't we? Some good performances from teams that have not been traditional sort of hotbed of darts.
Of course, we had Portugal last year with José de Sousa. He represented them for the first time. Countries like Canada, who we've seen them get to the quarters or last 16 with John Part, but they've done well with like Jeff Smith. He was brilliant for them last year. Poland now with Ratajski leading the way for them. We've got a lot of developing nations now. So Czech Republic were quite good, I think, the other year with Karel Sedlacek. So there's plenty of outside bets, definitely.
Okay, Josh, let's move on. You've got World Series news for us as well, haven't you?
Yeah, the World Series schedule was a bit depleted last year due to the pandemic, and that's the case again this year. So 4 of the events that were planned to be taking place in 2021 have been rescheduled now for 2022. The only event that is going to be taking place is the Nordic Darts Masters in Copenhagen. I think the rest of the events, so the US Darts Masters is still not going to be held. And we've got the triple header in Australia and New Zealand. That's also been rescheduled for 2022, which is a shame. But understandable. I think the travel and the logistics of going down under into the US in the current climate is just unrealistic for the players. So we're still going to have the Nordic Darts Masters in September. And then we've got the World Series finals going to be played in Amsterdam. That should be an absolute belter of an event. We should have a few good wildcard picks, I think, for that one as well, because it is an invitational event. So I'm expecting to see a few big names in Amsterdam.
Raz, it is a shame that the calendar for the World Series of Darts has been messed around so much. Understandably so. We all appreciate that, we've all got to be careful with COVID and things will have to be moved around and cancelled. But it is a shame the way that's been disrupted, isn't it?
It's a shame, but it's all done for the right reasons at the moment. And you know what? I can't wait for the Nordic Darts Masters, Josh.
You almost said that with a straight face, Raz.
He nearly did, and then a big smile came across his face.
Have you got any odds for that?
Yeah, odds are you're not going to watch it. But no, you should have the likes of maybe Darius Labanauskas. He might be playing in it. You might have Madars Razma. You should have some decent enough names, some lesser names that we don't always see. But you'd expect the big guns to dominate that, wouldn't you?
So you're getting a flight over?
No.
I could see you out there, Josh. I think you'd enjoy that one.
Do you reckon? I might be able to play.
Only if Barney plays.
If you do go, Josh, make sure you take your charger for your laptop.
Let's not start this again.
Here we go.
I don't know. Are you aware of the story of when he went to Amsterdam, Raz?
I think he actually called me up from Amsterdam that night. Goes, Raz, I left my charger at home.
Yeah, we enjoyed that one.
He said, "Can you go and get it for me?" Post it.
It was a nightmare. I was trawling around Amsterdam, which is a bit of a.
I beg your pardon.
No, yeah, exactly. And I was having to avoid any dubious
ladies of the night, shall we say?
Yeah, aptly put there, John. So I was looking around, went into a few shops that didn't unfortunately have the plugs I needed, and
but they had red lights.
Yeah.
But I came across a 24/7 shop. I thought perfect. It was shut. How can you have a shop called 24/7 that's shut?
How can a sports journalist forget his laptop charger? That's the question I want to know.
How did you actually get it charged up in the end, Josh?
I managed to find a laptop charger in the end, but I spoke to Dave Allen that night, the PDC head of media, and he said they had spare ones anyway, so it wouldn't have been an issue. But I didn't want to get there. Imagine flying all the way over to Amsterdam to report on the darts, and then my laptop dies. That's just a disaster, isn't it?
I don't know, John, if you've seen when Josh gets flustered, but
once or twice. Once or twice. You forget, I play cricket with Josh, so seeing Josh flustered, normally he's got either the ball or the bat in his hand when I see him get flustered. But
or on the score, or I'm on the touchline watching
exactly,
the batting collapse.
But it is a thing of beauty. It is a thing of beauty. Gentlemen, let's move on. Hot on the heels of World Series news, Josh. We've got Super Series news as well, haven't we?
We have the next batch of Super Series events are going to be taking place in Niedenhausen in Germany, which held the European Q-School earlier this year. That's going to be taking place just after the next batch of Premier League fixtures. So April the 24th until the 27th. That was confirmed a couple of weeks ago because we weren't sure initially whether the PDC would be able to travel over to Germany, but that has been confirmed. I think we might see quite a few players missing out on that one. I think we've had 6 or 7 tour card holders missing from the first 2 events. But Gary Anderson has already declared he won't be going to Germany because he doesn't think it's safe in the current climate and he wasn't too impressed. But I think you have to also accept that a lot of European players are having to take risks and make provisions to travel over to England to play. So I don't think they can complain too much. But yeah, there could be a few big names missing out on that one. But that should be good to see all the 128 PDC tour card holders back in action at the end of this month.
Yeah, Raz, I'll take Gary's point, but it is difficult, isn't it, when we're dealing with a sport that has got so many multiple nations taking part.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, that tournament was that was the one that they were urging Dozer to either go to or take a break from. But Josh, what do you think? Do you think you should go and play in that?
I think so. I mean, the Premier League will be over by then. Yeah. Without being disrespectful, you'd expect him to be eliminated, although you never write him off because he's a quality player. But we always say the Premier League's hard enough anyway. Playing, if it was in its usual format of week in, week out, it's tough anyway. But if you lose a few games in the Premier League, you can go back to the Pro Tour and get a few wins under your belt and get your confidence up. He hasn't been able to do that because it's night in, night out. So if he goes back to the Pro Tour, if he's averaging 89, 90, he might be able to pick up a few wins and boost his confidence and get some results going. So I think he should go. I think if you don't go, you're almost sending out a message that you're not feeling ready, and that's just going to make you feel more weak. And the next tournament you have to play, which could be in a month's time, he's going to be even more nervous and lacking even more confidence. So I think he has to bite the bullet and go, and I think he will do.
Yeah, he just needs a win, doesn't he, under his belt? So it's definitely worth going, getting that first win under his belt, and you just never know what's going to happen after that.
Exactly. I mean, it's tough enough when you're playing the best week in, week out. You know, you're going to struggle, or night in, night out, as this is. But with all due respect, there are some players on the tour where the performances Glenn's been putting in, yes, they're under par, but they would still beat quite a few players on the Pro Tour. But the Premier League is just so unforgiving. So, yeah, I think he has to go. And
Mike Mardle said it, hasn't he? He said it destroys players, the Premier League. It can do. He's lost 5 matches in a row, which equals Mardle's record, actually, for the start of the tournament.
Yeah, I think Sky stitched him up, didn't they, Paul Wayne, there by putting that graphic up on the last night. But
they did anything like
that. Nobody has lost 6 in a row though. Nobody. Their first 6 nights. So Glenn has got to try avoid that when he played Michael van Gerwen on night 6. But
yeah, good luck to him.
Doesn't bode well, does it?
It doesn't. But I mean, the Premier League is a tough school. But it's weird that we see a lot of players struggle on their debut campaigns. Glenn on debut won it. He topped the league phase and won it. So he's shown he's capable of producing.
He's not the same player though, Josh, as he was.
He's not at the moment. He's not at the moment, but I think a lot of it is confidence. And I actually do think he'll bounce back. Not in time to save himself from the Premier League. I do think later on in the year we might start to see the best of him again. And if we do, I think he'll be stronger for this experience that he's had to come through, because he's had years of dominating the BDO. He was the best player in the BDO for 4 or 5 years before he switched. Then he came to the PDC, won a title straight away, got to loads of semis, then won the Premier League. So he's not really had a down period, has he? It's all been highs and positives and praise. And now suddenly he's getting a bit of criticism and scrutiny. But as you mentioned earlier in the show, he had COVID last year. He said he doesn't think that's been the issue, but I think it must have played some part.
I think it's clearly affected him, hasn't it? You can just see the manner, the way he looks on stage, and he just looks quite tired,
drained, doesn't he?
Drained, yeah, exactly. So I think this break will help him into the next block, and then after that, he does need to go and get on that Pro Tour, because a win breeds confidence.
Exactly, momentum's massive. We say it all the time. He might get a couple of good first round results, and he could end up getting to the semis or finals or even winning one. So we hope he does anyway, because we don't like seeing any player suffer.
So could Barney.
Yeah.
Well, he's already won one, hasn't he? So he's already won one, but he hasn't been in the best of health, has he? He collapsed at the last one, and I think I read on Instagram he's been taking 3 weeks break from darts. He's actually started playing and practicing again yesterday, so we'll see how he goes.
There's your third Barney reference of the show. Wouldn't be a JDP with a bit of je t'aime at the end. Right, seeing as we've come to the end of the news section, but seeing as I've got 2 Sky Sports darting journalists with me, got any exclusives? Anything that's about to break that you can tell me? Come on, dish the dirt, guys. Anything you got for me?
Darts wise,
or I'll take a story. I'll take a breaking exclusive on any sport, Raz. I don't mind, even if it's Crufts. I don't care.
I've got one. I've heard Harry Kane could be leaving Tottenham. John, have you heard that one?
Right, let's move on. Nobody wants to. Do you know what? Listen, I'm not going to talk about agendas and media bias because I don't want to drop you two in trouble. Any Aston Villa stories for us, Raz?
When's Jack Grealish going to be fit? Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. When's he coming back? What is this injury he's been out with?
I think Grealish will be fit when he signs for Man United next season.
Ooh, that's uncalled for.
Well, we'll take the money.
Okay, I think that's all we've got. That is in the news. In the news. Right, we're approaching the end of the show, but before we go, let's throw it over to social media and see what questions have been coming in. This is Josh's Twitter chatter. Okay, yes, the questions have been coming in thick and fast on Twitter. You can follow us at Josh's Dartistry on Twitter, or of course on the Facebook account. Let's get straight into it, guys. Woody Rudd, friend of the show, who he's always sending us questions in. Woody, he's great to have around. Woody says another one already. Steady on, lads. He's not quite used to us recording so quickly in succession. Josh, he says I've got a boring question. I don't think this is a boring question at all, and I'm glad we've got Raz here with us because both of you guys should be able to give us the inside track on this. With James Wade being given a spot in the Premier League with just a few hours to spare, what is the protocol? Does he get a phone call asking him to come and play and that's it? Or does he have to be officially invited by email or post? Are there contract negotiations? Is he officially told about prize money and scheduling? At such short notice, would he just turn up and play and everything be sorted out afterwards by his manager? And then Woody says, I told you it was a boring question. But no, I don't think that is a boring question. Obviously, it's something that the PDC haven't had to deal with at such short notice. But what is the protocol there? How did James find out and how did it all become official? Raz, what can you tell me? Do you know anything?
All I know is that James Wade was at the venue and that when the positive COVID test came through, he was there, he was on standby, and he wasn't the only one, apparently. I've heard that there was another darts player on standby as well, just in case a second player was to drop out. So that's all I know at the moment.
Josh, it must have been a nightmare for PD. I bet there was panic in the offices of the PDC when they were trying to sort out what they were going to do.
I know, tell me about it. But yeah, Raz is right what he said about James Wade. He was, I think, there a couple of nights before he travelled up. He was on the reserve list. I wasn't aware that there was another player present. I must admit, I hadn't heard that. But maybe it was Prenders.
Prenders was the one who told me, actually.
Okay.
But nobody told Prenders who that second player was.
I wonder if it was Barney. That would have been fantastic, wouldn't it? Imagine the outrage on social media. But no, I think it's a shame for the PDC, of course, because they've lost their world champion and world number one from the event. But their hands were tied, really. James was ready and they're prepared, but I don't imagine the PDC would have been expecting any positive tests because we saw the UK Open, I think Justin Park was the only one out of 128. So when you've got 10 players, also COVID is not really in the community as much, is it, at the moment, as it was compared to December, January. So the odds of one of the 10 players testing positive was quite high, I would have said. So
I think it was just a huge surprise, didn't it, when it happened, and it happened so suddenly as well. It just caught everyone by surprise. So when they said that price is out, Wade's in, it was like, wow, that was quick.
Yeah, I mean, he's a victim of the format, isn't he? Because if it was a weekly event, the Premier League, he may have only had to miss, say, 2 nights.
Which we've seen in the past, haven't we, when there's been illness? We have seen that happen before.
Exactly. They'd have been able to reschedule the fixtures and they'd have just had to catch up. But he's missing the first 5 nights. I'm not even sure, in terms of his quarantine and self-isolation, he might not even have been able to play in the second batch. And you can't then reschedule 9 fixtures. It's just logistically impossible. So they had to make a decision. And unfortunately for Gerwin, he misses out. But as we mentioned, it won't affect his ranking. He'll still be able to play at the Super Series, I think. So hopefully it won't affect him too much. But he's never won the Premier League. He's never even got into the top 4. So I'm sure this would have been one he was targeting. But James has got his reprieve. Many think he should have been in there anyway. So he might see it as a vindication, if you like. So there we go.
Do you think he deserved to be in there, Wade?
I don't think... He got to 2 finals last year. He was 5th in the world when he missed out. So I think he was unlucky. But every player, apart from Rob Cross last year, won a major. Oh, and Aspinall. But Aspinall got to the final last year. So I don't think Wade deserved a spot over any of the players that were picked, apart from Cross. But Cross was already automatic, so they couldn't get rid of him. I think Wade was just unlucky, really, that so many different players had won majors, because we never usually see this, do we? This many different players win majors. Usually it's always 2 or 3 players win them. But this year we saw like Van den Berg, De Souza, Durrant, Van den Berg. It was just quite an unusual year. I think he was unlucky, but I don't think he was unfairly treated.
Raz, do you think James is at a disadvantage in terms of he only had such a short period of time to get himself mentally switched on and ready for the tournament?
No, I kind of compared it to when Denmark won Euro 92. And
that's a great analogy. That's a great comparison.
And they came in through the back door when Yugoslavia were banned from the competition. They came in on a boat and won the competition. Beat Holland, beat Germany in the final. So why can't Wade do it?
Josh, do you remember Euro 92?
I was just a figment of imagination in my parents' eyes, I think, at that point, John.
we can't talk old school football with Josh Raz. He's only a baby. Josh thinks that there's only ever been the Premier League. Let's move on. Right, this is the burning question. Cameron Hogwood has asked, has Raz had his haircut yet? And Paul Prenders said, I had an early exclusive viewing. So hot topic this, Raz.
It's so funny because I had my haircut and then I said to Prenders, oh, by the way, I've had my haircut. And he was looking at me and goes, oh, yeah. He didn't even notice. I was looking like Howard Stern.
I was going to say, just how wild did it get during lockdown, Raz? Was it?
I'll tell you, when I was a student, those are the days.
Well, I've been having home haircuts. I'll take my hat off for you. The wife's been shaving mine and cutting mine up. So. Well, I'll tell you what, I've saved an absolute fortune this last year, Raz. I may never go back to that barber's again. No,
I missed my barber, so it's just nice getting back to the barber's having a chat.
Absolutely.
Cut up the rest.
I'm sure Raz might upload a photo of himself on his Twitter account and you can see his new haircut. So follow Raz on Twitter. Let's have a look. Who else have we got? We got Callum Wilco's asked a question. If you had a Legends Masters event, who would you have in it and who would win? Josh, let's throw that over to you.
He's asked for 8 current players and 8 legends.
Yes.
Of course, put me on the spot, isn't it? Well, the 8 current, you'd have Van Gerwen, you'd have Price, Wright, Anderson, probably most of the Premier League, wouldn't you? Yeah, Anderson.
Wade,
yeah.
Lewis. AD Lewis.
Oh, AD Lewis. You'd have AD Lewis if he was 128th in the world, wouldn't you, Raz?
Barney.
Yeah, whether you count Barney's current, I suppose you do.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Then who else?
Bunting?
Whitlock, maybe? Simon Whitlock?
Yeah, Whitlock, yeah.
Something like that. The legends would
Justin Pipe.
Well, that'd slow things down a bit.
Now.
We'll be there all night.
I won't have a bad word said about Justin.
Mervyn King.
The King.
Big Merv.
Legend. He was quite unlucky to miss out on this year's Premier League too. He had a great Masters and Players Championship. I love his indignation at players that celebrate. He just looks like a disapproving headmaster, doesn't he? It's brilliant.
Him and Gerwin Price.
Oh, fantastic. Well, the Van Gerwen game at the Players' Finals, King just muttering under his breath every time Van Gerwen celebrated. But the legends, you'd have Taylor, Priestley, John Part, John Lowe, Bob Anderson, of course, who we had on the show. Who else? Ted Hankey. I'd love to see Ted Hankey back. He's not being confirmed yet for the World Seniors. I'd love to see Ted Hankey playing.
And Andy Fordham.
He's in there, isn't he? Andy Fordham.
Yeah.
I'm not too. Awfully,
Richie Burnett.
I love Richie. Yeah, fantastic character. Richie's got to be in there. I mean, of course, it's just a shame the likes of Jockey Wilson and Eric Bristow, 2 absolute legends. They'd have been absolutely fantastic for this, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Paul Lim.
I'd love to see Paul Lim in the World Seniors.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be older than most of the seniors, and he's still playing, Paul Lim.
And
I'll tell you, Neil would like to see John Lowe in there. John's one of Neil's favourite.
Yeah, he's in the World Seniors, isn't he, John Lowe?
Yeah.
So that'd be good to see him there.
Trina Gulliver.
Well, listen, she's 10-time women's champion, so she's got a shout. But I think who would win it? You'd have to say the current crop, wouldn't you? I mean, Taylor would be the most competitive out the legends, but you'd be hard pushed to back against Van Gerwen, Price, Wright or Anderson, I think, and maybe Taylor. Or maybe Barney, I don't know. But
there we go. I was waiting for that.
I couldn't back against him, could I? But no.
I don't think Barney's going to win anything ever again. Actually.
You said that. He's already won a title this year, man. He won one a month ago.
That'll be his last title before he retires.
We've got that on record now. If he's going to be wrong.
Tell you what, John. One of the worst things is having to interview Barney. And then,
oh God, it was awful.
Oh dear,
the Rotterdam one.
When you had to interview Barney, and he was probably his lowest ebb that we've ever seen Barney, and Josh had to get in a room with him and have a conversation.
I remember interviewing Barney with his old manager,
Jacko. Yeah,
Jacko, and that was.
He's a great guy, Jacko.
Yeah, he's a real top man, and at that time Barney was just talking about his life and how everything went downhill, and Jacko was like, you got to think of the positives. Jacko's so positive, weren't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was in an awful place, Barney, back then mentally, and he admitted as much now. But he's got a new manager now, hasn't he?
Yeah. What's his name, Josh? What's his name?
Oh, you stitched me up last episode. His name is Bendy Cock.
Okay,
there we go.
Thank you very much. I just enjoyed making you say that. Fantastic. Just on that question, we were obviously reeling off some names there that you know, very much associated with the BDO. Raz, I'm very interested to get your opinion on the BDO and what's gone on at the BDO over the last, 5 years or so, really. And ultimately, it doesn't seem to exist in the form that we all used to know and love. What's your take on the BDO?
It's been an absolute shambles how they've handled the BDO. I mean, it was the tournament, wasn't it, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and then it was actually competing there for a while. And you can understand why players went over from the BDO to the PDC because of the way it was run, really, more than anything. And I think they've shown that in the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, it is a real shame. Let's move on. Let's see what other questions we've got. I've got one from Big T on Twitter. Following the announcement that amateur players will be allowed in the Grand Slam of darts again, how exactly do you think that will work? Will they come from MAD or the WDF or even both? That question is completely out of my wheelhouse. Josh, what we saying?
I think he's answered his own question in a sense. I think he's right. We've got modern amateur darts set up by Steve Brown, who's currently on the PDC tour. We've got some finals of modern amateur darts, like Wayne Warren, the last BDO world champ. He is, I think, the current modern amateur darts world champion. So he's defending his title belt because they're almost like made it almost like wrestling in terms of rather than trophies, you're defending your belts, you're defending your titles. So it's an interesting concept that I think will be successful. So I think we'll have some players come from that. The WDF, they've got big plans. I know we've got a lot of very good people involved there at the WDF who were instrumental in the success of the BDO, like little Richard Ashdown, for example. He's heavily involved with the World Darts Federation. So I think when we're out of lockdown, we'll start to see those events held. Martin Adams, of course, is going to be one that's going to be playing in the WDF, he said. So I think I'd love to see someone like Wolfie back. We forgot to mention him in terms of the legends.
Yeah, Martin Adams. Yeah.
I mean, he's still playing cracking darts on the online darts. He's still averaging over 100. So even at 64 years of age.
Would you like to see him? I mean, do you think he would have been like as a Premier League type of contender that we have kind of missed out on having somebody like that?
I'd have loved to have seen him, say, 5-10 years ago. I think in the PDC he'd have been in the top 10. I think he's that good. He's still playing great darts now, just hasn't got the consistency. But it was great to see him at the Grand Slam. He had such a smile on his face, didn't he? Just enjoyed every moment, and the crowd really enjoyed him being there. Yeah, we missed the boat there. I think, like I say, his peak was about a decade ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have been great to see more of him and Taylor together. That was
100%.
Well, not too long ago, about a year ago, there was some rumours going around, Raz, with regards to the BDO and obviously Des Jacqueline's handling of the BDO. There was rumours that Wolfie might have thrown his hat in the ring to sort of take on the running of the BDO. Unfortunately, it never panned out. But for someone who's got his heart in the BDO, I don't think that would have been too bad a move, would it?
I don't. But then again, I think like we've seen the end of the BDO, to be honest, and I can't see it ever being what it was like 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, because that was where it was at its peak, and we were seeing some of the great world champions of the old BDO coming into the PDC, and it was a bit unfortunate in a way that the PDC had the pick of the best players of the BDO coming in and then earning a lot of money in a PDC, but I suppose that's what money is in the PDC.
Okay, Michael at Chiggers95 on Twitter. A bit of a harsh question. Should Durrant pull out of the Premier League to stop damage limitation? I mean, we've discussed Glenn's struggles in the Premier League, and as Raz mentioned, the break might do him well. He certainly won't pull out. He's a very proud man, and there's not really the protocol for pulling out. I certainly expect him to he's not going to win it, obviously, but I certainly expect his results to improve, Josh.
Yeah, I think he did an interview with the PDC, and he's always honest and frank, Glenn. And I think he said if it had been at the start of the year in February, he might have considered pulling out because he was so low on confidence. But yeah, he's not going to pull out midway through. He's a proud champion. He's a battler, Glenn. His success in his career has all been based on like his fighting spirit, never giving up, his tenacity. And he'll return and he'll do himself proud, I'm sure. Even if he loses his next 2 games and he's eliminated, he'll be giving 110% in his last 2 matches to try and end on a high. So I hope for Glenn's sake he can get some positive results under his belt, because no one wants to see a player struggle, a class player like Glenn struggle.
Yeah, and I think there's money still involved, isn't there, with sponsorships and all sorts. So you really don't want to be pulling out of the Premier League because it's, there's a lot of money involved there.
Josh, that's all the questions from Twitter. Anything over on the Facebook page?
Indeed, we have one on Facebook from friend of the show, Mickey Gensler. He has asked us who is going to be the next first-time major winner in which event. Oh, that's a tough one, isn't it?
Cool.
So if any one of us gets this right, we deserve well, I'm not sure what we deserve, but we deserve something because this will be tough to pick. Next first-time major winner, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and say Joe Cullen.
That's a great shout.
I think Joe has come on leaps and bounds over the last 18 months. We saw him at the Worlds, didn't we, in that cracker against Michael van Gerwen. One of the best games I've seen at Ali Pali. He came up just short. But he hasn't been deflated by that. He's come on stronger at the start of 2021, winning at least, I think he might have even won 2 Pro Tour titles, but he's been so consistent, playing high-quality stuff. He's now top seed on the Pro Tour Order of Merit. He's in all the TV events. I think he's got a great chance. Maybe someone like Christoph Ratajski, the contender. Hopefully we have still got Dave Chisnell and Michael Smith. They've still not won one, have they?
I was going to say that, Josh, Chizzy or Smith, and they've been around for so long.
I'm looking down the Order of Merit, and you almost forget they haven't won anything because they've been at the top of the game in the Premier League before. But yeah, I'm going to go with Cullen, and I'm going to say he'll do it at the Players' Championship Finals this year. What a shout that is if that comes off. Oh dear. What about you, Raz?
Raz, who are you
going for? I agree with you. I think Cullen is a fantastic shout. He's got so much talent, hasn't he? And so exciting to watch. Like when we saw him in that match against Van Gerwen, he was unlucky, but he pushed him so hard. And then for Chizzy to come up and thrash Van Gerwen like that, nobody saw that coming except me.
You had a bet on it, didn't you? Not 5-0. You had a bet on Chizzy to win, didn't you?
No, I said for the quarterfinals, I think I picked the 4 players and they all won. And
yeah, that's what I'm saying. You picked Chisnell to beat Van Gerwen, didn't you? And
yeah,
he'd lost his last 27. I said, you must be mad. And he won 5-0.
I think I just saw Chizzy was playing so well, and you could just see Van Gerwen was a little bit vulnerable, especially after the Cullen match. And I never thought Chizzy would whitewash him, though.
No, I don't think Van Gerwen did either.
But you know what? He deserved it, didn't he? I've never seen Chizzy play so well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I suppose I should throw my hat in the ring on this. Someone for me who's more than deserving of claiming their first major, someone who's been around for so long and has often struggled to convert their form from the sort of floor tournaments onto the big stage. Ian White, for me, Diamond White. I'd love to see him step up. Players' Championship. I think he got to the semi-final back in 2019. That was his first ever semi-final, wasn't it? So I think Ian's been there or thereabouts for so long.
And he's entertaining to follow as well on social media.
Absolutely,
he's a brilliant follow, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and he does great stuff. You know, I remember seeing I forget which tournament it was or where it was, but I remember someone being interviewed. I think it was on ITV, and he was in the background doing some hoovering and some cleaning up.
It was the Pro Tour, Pro Tour.
He's got such a good sense of humour, and maybe I'm allowing my heart to rule my head a little bit, but I would be over the moon to see Ian clinch a major. Josh, do you think can that happen?
He can. He's still a quality player, and he's always there and thereabouts on the floor. He's a floor specialist. The thing is, he's yet to really do it on the TV. He produces great games, just cannot seem to string a tournament together. But I thought he would really, really perform at the behind closed doors events on TV because they're like Pro Tours, and he wins so many of those.
Yeah.
But it's not really happened for him, and he's still got the game, but age is not on his side. Without being disrespectful, he's. I'm just looking now. I think he's coming up. He'll be 51.
Yeah.
In August. And, we've still seen Mervyn King's 54. He's still getting to finals. Barney, 53, he's still playing. But it will be tough for him. And I think he needs to do it sooner rather than later because there's so many quality players coming through.
It's amazing how many players are playing in their 50s now, aren't they? It's like, the standard's still that high. It's incredible.
You've still got Stevie Beaton. He's still strutting his stuff, isn't he? He's been around donkey's years. I think it's 30 years at the World Championship, wasn't it, last year? It's great to see.
Okay, thanks for all your questions. Don't forget you can send them through to us over on Twitter at Josh's Dartistry or check us out on the Facebook page. That was Josh's Twitter chatter.
Martin Adams, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Right then, gentlemen, that brings us nicely to the end of the show. Josh's Dartistry, the Bounce Out, episode number 9. First and foremost, Raz, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. It's been really great to get your insight onto a few things. You are a man behind the curtain, oftentimes over at Sky Sports and all things darts. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure coming on, and I don't really normally go on podcasts or anything, but I've really enjoyed my time, and I've done that especially for Josh.
Oh.
Good man, Raz. Great to have you on, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll send out an invite again, Raz. You can come and join us at any time. So,
it was still in my job.
Well, we could put Neil on notice now. We can let Neil know that Raz has done such a good job.
You can just keep me as a special guest, and then in a year's time, when I'm still coming on every week, I can still be the special guest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you, Raz. It's much appreciated. Josh, thank you for joining us as always.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure.
You up to much there this week? Got much on?
I've got a dart shift on Thursday, a bit of cricket Saturday, and then the Premier League call starts on Monday the 19th. So back on for that.
Excellent. Right, check us out on social media. Spread the word. Thanks for downloading us. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Josh's Dartistry.